C++ background and are not too comfortable with object-oriented programming, often the first question is, well, what's the difference? See, if you wanted to modify the data from the outside, what will you do? You'll call the set, and then set will change this variable, right? Everybody agrees? That's the purpose of the set, to allow changes to the data from the outside. So people often say, well, why even write these 4 functions? Just make it public. So what's the answer?
Accessibility.
Okay, see in both cases, so again, let me repeat that question. In one case, we are making it public so that from the outside, somebody can modify this data, correct? In the second case, we are keeping the data private, but through a tiny set function, we are allowing this to be modified. So the question is, why even write a set function? Why not just make it public, let somebody modify it? What's the difference between this approach and this approach? They both allow you to modify the data.
But this is organized.
Say it again.
One of the getter setter method allows the user to be the variable to be modified during a program, but otherwise it gives direct access to the variable.
Well, the end result is both are allowing you to modify, right? Okay, so now let me give you the proper answer. Okay, in this case, we have unrestricted modification to the data or reading of the data, meaning anybody can come and modify the data and read the data. So we are truly back to this problem of open access. Okay, so this will not solve the open access problem, right? Why is this different? Because set is a function. In a function, we can write additional code. To check if modification will be allowed or modification should be allowed. Okay, so think of it this way. Okay, let me give you an analogy, then I'll come and explain it over here. Okay, let's say you wanted to take this C# class. Okay, so I have 2 choices. We open these doors. Anybody can walk in and sit down and take the class, right? Or the other option is we put a gatekeeper over here. So some person, before you walk into the room, they check your ID and they check, are you registered in the class? Only then you will come into the class, okay? So think of these tiny get and set functions like the gatekeepers, okay? Let's say the calling code, which wants to modify, does not have the authorization to modify. Then it will simply disallow the modification, okay? Or even if we do not require any authorization, let me give you a simple example. Suppose you have a class called student. Okay? In the student class, one of the fields you declared is in test score. Okay? And you put a private keyword over here. Okay? So obviously from the outside somebody cannot modify it, right? Because we made it private. Okay? Now what if I make it public? So what if I make it public? And suppose we created one student, student S1 equal to new student. Okay, if I did S1 dot test1 score equal to 80, will this work? Will this code work if this was public? Yes. Yes. What if somebody said S1 dot test score equal to -50? Will this code work?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because it's public. Anybody can do anything, right? Now let me put a gatekeeper over here, which is essentially this get and set function, and show you that if we try to modify it outside of 0 to 100, it will not allow it. So the proper way to write this will be something like this. Okay, so we will create a class called student, and I'll write it in more C# style. Okay, then we will say int test score. Okay, now in C#, if you don't put the keyword private is the default. In Java, public is the default. Okay, so you can add the keyword private, but even if you didn't do it, there will be a default of private. Okay, so you'll declare in test score, right? Then you will write a set function. Okay, void set test score. So void test score in, let's say, score. Okay, then you will write if score is less than 0 or score is greater than greater than 100. Then throw new exception invalid score, else test score equal to score. So here's one way to write part of the code in this class called student. Okay, so this set function, so here's my set function. So here's the set function, right? And this is the tiny gatekeeper set that I was talking about. Okay, and of course this will be marked public. Okay, and for those of you who are completely new, do not understand new exception, basically means generate an error for right now. Okay, so now take a look over here. Because the test score is private, if somebody tried to do this on this particular student class, okay, so if you try to execute this on this class, what will happen?
Invalid.
See, this minus 50 will go over here, correct? Okay, then it will do if score is less than 0. It is less than 0. So it will generate an error. It will not modify the score, right? So that's why from now on, any class that we create, whatever data we declare in that class, okay, you won't put public or private because in C# it is already default as private, right? But you will end up writing two tiny get and set functions. The job of the get will be to give you the value of that variable. Okay, and like I said, it's a complete function. We can further put one more parameter over here or further one more check over here to check what is the username of the logged in user. And if that user is not authorized to see the score, we can simply generate another error, right? So these get and set functions basically allow us, so get set, allow us to access data in a controlled manner. Okay. So we keep the data private. We provide get and set to allow us to access the data in a controlled manner. Okay, so one way, and by the way, this was just the set test score. Very similarly, if we were writing the get test score, it will look something like this: public int get test score. Okay, and return test score. Okay, and if we wanted to do some additional check, the security check, we can write that code over here. But as a minimum, this is how the get function will look like, and this is how the set function will look like for a student class. Okay. Now, how is this for those of you who have programmed in Java as an example? How is it different from Java so far?
Not really.
Isn't it the same? With one small difference, and what was that?
Private and
The default being private or public, right? So that's why I said if you know Java, literally if I gave you a one-page summary of this is the difference between C# and Java, you will learn C# in one day, okay? Well, 80% of C#. C# does have a few new things that Java does not have, and where it takes a little bit of time, right? And vice versa. If you knew C# and if you wanted to learn Java, if I gave you a one-page summary of the differences, in one day you can learn Java, okay? So that's one of the nice things about learning C# or Java. They both complement each other, okay? So now, even though this style was same as the Java style, and you can use that in C#, but C# has a slightly, C# gets this, it has another style for writing the get and set, and let me give you that style. And that style looks like this. Okay, so you will create a class called student. Okay, every language has its own convention. Okay, for example, if you are